Happy New Year, Mr. President. It's good to see you and everybody back at the beginning of a new year. After, I hope, a few days of respite and relaxation with friends and families. And hopefully we've all had a chance to recharge our batteries for the work ahead. One of the great things about taking a few days off during the holidays is you get a chance to reflect on your work, your life, your family, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. That's what New Year's resolutions are all about. Changing some of those habits that maybe aren't serving us all that well. But it's also to sort of reflect on the work here in the Senate. And I want to start by quoting one of the wisest men I know, and that was my dad. My dad said, he had a whole list of aphorisms, most of which kind of embarrassed my brother and sister and me because they were so corny. But some of them were pretty shrewd and right on. And one of them was that he said, the hallmark of intelligence is to learn from your mistakes. The hallmark of intelligence is to learn from your mistakes. And we are merely human, and we all make mistakes. We all acknowledge that. But learning from our mistakes is perhaps the most important thing we can do to make progress, to get smarter, to learn from experience, and to do things better the next time. I also thought of another wise man. You might call him a genius, Albert Einstein, who supposedly said, and I can't vouch for this, but maybe it's apocryphal, maybe it's accurate. He said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I was reflecting on these two definitions of intelligence and insanity as I thought about the year past and our 50-50 Senate. In 2020, we had a historic election, no doubt. Our Democratic colleagues captured not only the White House, but the Senate and the House of Representatives. But what's so amazing about that is the lessons that they learned from that 50-50 election in the Senate and a bare majority in the House was very different from what I think historically people have come to believe that kind of message would send. Ordinarily, you would think that, well, first of all, this is not the New Deal in Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt had huge majorities in the House and the Senate when he passed the New Deal legislation, historic legislation by any count. Conversely, in 2020, when President Biden was elected, the American people basically said, we don't particularly trust either one of the major political parties, so we're going to divide power equally in the Senate and give you a bare majority in the House, believing, I think, maybe intuitively, if not consciously, that would force us to work together. That's not necessarily the first instinct we have when we come here to the Senate or the Congress. We want what we want. We all run for election. We campaign on a platform saying, if elected, I'm going to do this or that. And it's frustrating to not be able to do it. But the wisdom of our founders was that with the various checks and balances that we have on unilateral or partisan power, that when the voters say, well, we're going to divide power equally in the Senate, you would think the conclusion or the lesson that you would learn from that is what historically we've come to believe to be true, is that they believe we ought to work together and not try to do things on our own. So you would think that an equally divided Senate would encourage the majority leader, who is majority leader only by virtue of the fact that President Harris is the presiding officer of the Senate, She's not actually a member of the Senate, but she can break tie votes. That's what gives Senator Schumer, the senator from New York, his job as the majority leader, in spite of the fact that we have a 50-50 Senate. So you would think that an equally divided chamber would encourage the majority leader to prioritize bipartisan bills that could win broad support. That's what we did last year. In the last year of the Trump administration, we worked together to pass, I think, close to $5 trillion of relief from COVID-19, this terrible pandemic that's gripped the planet for the last 2 years. But apparently, the majority leader reached a different conclusion, because that's not the type of work that he's prioritized in the chamber during this last year. It didn't start off very well after a wonderful speech by President Biden on January the 20th, when he talked about healing our country, coming together as a nation despite our differences. The first thing the Democratic-controlled Senate did is passed a partisan $2 trillion spending bill in the name of COVID-19 relief. Well, they omitted to mention that only about 10% of the money, the $2 trillion, on top of the $5 trillion we'd spent on a bipartisan basis, that out of that $2 trillion, only about 10% of it was really related to the pandemic, and only 1% supported vaccinations. Perhaps the single most important thing that we've done in response to COVID-19 is to make vaccinations broadly available. And we continue to encourage people to get vaccinated, as I do every chance I get. Well, but after that first $2 trillion partisan spending bill, our colleagues then repeatedly used the Senate's time, which is the most precious asset we have here in the Senate, which is floor time, to vote on smaller but no less problematic bills that really stood zero chance of becoming law in a 50-50 Senate. There was one in the name of paycheck fairness, that was in fact designed to line the pockets of trial lawyers, and it didn't pass. Then our Democratic colleagues drafted an election takeover bill. They said the only way for us to restore the public's confidence in the voting process is for the federal government to take it over, to hijack it, notwithstanding their position in the Constitution that elections should be run at the state level. And this election takeover bill was so blatantly partisan that even members of the Democratic Senate voted against it. But they didn't stop there. They rewrote the bill and brought it up for another vote in October. And again, it failed. Our Democratic colleague, the majority leader, has said this partisan legislation will resurface again later this month. But I don't expect the outcome to change, because it's the same unconstitutional partisan legislation that's not to advance the cause of access to the ballot or enhance voter integrity. It's designed to enhance Democratic prospects to win elections in 2022 and 2024. That's what it's about.